Most students who struggle with Latin are upset by the inflections. But English has inflections too. If you can learn to feel comfortable with your inflections in English, you will feel more comfortable with your inflections in Latin, and you won't feel so frustrated that Latin is different from English. So what are inflections then? Inflection means when words change, when their grammar changes, usually at the end of the word. And inflection saves time. It's more efficient because you don't have to have a whole separate new word for every single thing for every single grammatical function. So in Latin class, when we refer to the endings that we have to learn, we're really talking about inflection. And I will use the two terms interchangeably in class. Inflection equals endings. Please remember that there are those small number of times when the word changes grammar, but it changes somewhere other than the ending. That can happen. But usually, we're talking about the endings. English is weakly inflected. Not as much inflection as Latin. But let's look at some examples of English inflection. Here's an inflection that's so obvious you may not have even realized that you were dealing with a complex grammatical concept. In English nouns, the usual way that we go from singular to plural, and you know how to do this, this is so obvious. How do we go from singular to plural? We add an S, but look at where the S goes. It goes where? At the end of the word, making it an inflection. Here's a couple other examples. Oh look, there's one of those pesky exceptions. The plural of mouse is mice. It changed in the middle of the word instead of at the end, but it's still an inflection. Another really obvious example. I bet you even thought of this before I put it on the screen. How do you get from the present tense walk to the past tense? You add an inflection or a grammatical ending. See? You thought it was simple, but it's really actually a complex grammatical concept, a similar one to what we use in Latin. And again, sometimes in those irregular words, something other than the ending changes. But we can deal with that because it's not all the time. The last example I want to show you of English inflection is in pronouns. The difference between pronouns we use as the subject of a sentence and pronouns that we use as an object. We consider it baby talk to say like, me go to the store, or me really hate Latin and I wish this video. But the reason it sounds like baby talk is because when you use the word me in the subject of the sentence, you're using the wrong inflection. And now that you know how this works, you are going to be one of those awesome people who starts using the pronoun whom correctly. Alright, so now that you're all caught up on inflections in English, or if you're not all caught up, your mind is blown and you're like, oh my god, English has inflections or endings too. Let's look at how they work in Latin. In the first category, we have nouns, pronouns, and adjectives. In the second category, we have verbs. Nouns, pronouns, and adjectives all use a category of inflection called declension. Verbs use a category of inflection called conjugation. The word declension has a couple of meanings. The first meaning is the act of making a noun chart, and we call that declining. So if I told you to decline the noun puella, you'd get out your paper and pencil and start writing puella, puelli, puelli, puellum, puella, etc. The second meaning of the word declension is a family of nouns that all behave the same way. For example, first declension or third declension, because they all use the same endings or inflections. Similarly, The word conjugation has two big meanings. One is the act of making a verb chart. Like if I tell you to conjugate a verb maybe amo, you would start writing amo, almos, almot. That's conjugation, the act of conjugating a verb. The second meaning is a family of verbs that all act the same. So, for example, second conjugation verbs all have that long E in their stem. In summary, the concepts I covered in this video were: inflection means the endings that we use on words to change their grammatical meanings. English has grammatical endings or inflections too, so you can use that to feel more comfortable about Latin inflections when you see that they both work the same way. Yes, I know, Latin has more of them. And Latin inflections are broken down into declensions and conjugations for the most part. Feel free to shoot me an email or a text message if there's anything that I can clear up for you or say in a more concise or more explanatory way. And as a parting thought, if you were feeling just fine about English before I told you that it was also inflected, Gautier feels ya, man. Alright, y'all, peace out. I'll see you in class.